I got no intro ready. Uh,
These are the best. I love you no intro ready intros.
really?
Yeah,
I like
yeah.
it flat.
Because
No?
I get to watch the brain ticking over in real time. Great.
G'day everyone. Welcome back to Got the 4 Points. We are in round 4 or 5 or 6 or whatever it is where you are in your local league. We hope your team's doing well. We hope you're breaking a few winning streaks, maybe breaking a few losing streaks. Oh, fucking hell. All right. G'day everyone. Welcome back to Got the 4 Points. It's round 4 or 5 or 6 or something, wherever you are. We hope your team's doing well. We hope that your boys are getting the win, and we hope your girls are getting the win as well in local football all around Victoria and Australia. Rob here with you, along with Pete. We're hoping that there's some more club breaking losing streaks, Pete, and we're hoping that there's some good winning streaks keeping going. It's all happening. So much to get through. How are you, mate?
Doing well, thanks, mate. Yeah, doing very well. It's been a much better week for me on my end compared to when we released the last episode. But no, it's been another big week of footy. There's lots happening, and I know that because there's so much happening this week, we've decided to park some of our regular segments like Footy Fire Starters, which has been on fire, can I say, with your leadership in the last few episodes. But certainly we thought we might dedicate a little bit more time to having a look around the leagues and certainly what's been happening around in the leagues. And of course, as we've mentioning every episode, we've of course got our Spotify, which you can listen to us on, or the YouTube if you do want to watch what we're talking about as we talk about it. And of course, we do have our Instagram and email. So if there's anything out there that people are seeing that is of interest in local footy land, we are only two people. We can only look at so much Play HQ. Albeit
A
I
fair
did
bit,
see
though.
a fair bit, and I did see Play HQ went down for a little bit the other day, and I thought that's probably off the back of traffic from you and I.
Yeah.
Um, but certainly we're always interested if anyone's got any stories out there in local footy league, or maybe you just want us to stitch someone up, one of your mates, one of your footy mates up, and we're always more than happy to do that as well. But no, I'm doing very well, Rob. What about yourself? How have you been this week?
Yeah, good. I've probably had the busier week this week, but no, I'm doing well. I'm excited for another week of footy. Happy to see, as those of you watching on YouTube, we've rocked up to do a local footy podcast, both wearing NBA gear, so we're really on point. Um, and that will mean very little to those on the Spotify. I'm actually enjoying the playoffs over there in the US, though. Enjoying following that. It's good having it. Well, it's good and bad, right? I mean, it's sort of a little bit inconveniently in work time. But anyway, I'm enjoying that. Yeah, lots of cool things to talk about in the footy. As you said, we're gonna just go through a bit of an extended what caught our eye. I don't know whether you want to go. Do you want to go point for point here?
I think we
And
should.
yeah, let's do it like that. Why don't you start us off? Tell us what caught your eye first up.
Yeah, I think what caught my eye first up, and we've mentioned them a few times throughout this season, it is Portland, the Portland Tigers there in the Hampton Footy League. They did. We spoke a little bit about them breaking their losing streak, and they've been going on a winning streak, which is incredible. They did unfortunately on the weekend have their first loss for the year. Now, sometimes you go, oh, first loss, that's, wheels are falling off. That's not great. Um, but I actually think it was a very encouraging loss. It was a 6 point loss to the 2024 runner up in North Warrnambool. And they're still sitting second on the ladder just behind North Warrnambool. So I think that's incredibly encouraging for Portland. And I think maybe the focus at the start of the year was let's get a win on the board and let's maybe get two wins on the board. And I just wonder after a 6 point loss to last year's runner up, if you don't start to, who are on top, if you don't start to think maybe, all right, let's push for a finals berth here and maybe we could go deep. Maybe we could do something this season pretty special. So, we'll definitely be keeping my eyes on where Portland go throughout the year, but that certainly caught my eye.
Yeah, very good. All right. I had my attention drawn to the Outer East Football Netball League. We haven't talked too much about them lately, um, but got to be one of the best names in local footy, Aaron Mullett. I mean,
Great name.
unfortunately, the photo that I saw of him um, was lacking
Mullet.
the name, yeah, the mullet actually on the back of the head. That was a little bit disappointing. So Aaron needs to lift his game, although perhaps that would be a little bit too obvious. I don't know. Anyway, he kicked 12 goals, one for Wandon on the weekend. We like seeing big bags of goals kicked by full forwards, and he's been a regular in that column this season, Pete. He's actually
Okay.
kicked 38 goals already in 4 games this season. So I would have to say he's on track to kick the
Mm.
ton this season. If he'll be on track to kick more than the ton if he's going at that rate. Yeah, pity the fullbacks lining up on Aaron Mullett on the weekend. I reckon that's
Yeah,
impressive.
definitely. That's very impressive. I wonder what's the quickest someone has gotten to a ton in local footy. I'm sure there's maybe a stat out there somewhere. We might have to do a little bit of research into who's done that. But I know there's
Yeah,
always ton watch in local footy. Everyone's
yeah.
always watching to see who can get to the ton. So Aaron looks like he might be in a red hot form there to get it. Albeit I don't know, maybe a league suspension for not having a mullet. Is that too far? I don't know. But
Oh, maybe.
Aaron Mullet not having a mullet is disappointing. But Rob, you go from a big goal kicker there in the outer east. I'm going to another big goal kicker, and he's a big goal kicker throughout his whole career. It is the man himself, Brendan Favola, Fev. Him and Guy Sebastian, of course, another big footballing legend, Guy Sebastian, line up for Masala Dandenong in, get this, the thirds Div 5 in VAFA. Um, and Rob, for a team that, and I looked back through, they haven't had a whole lot of success in 2025, the old Masala Dandenong. And I had a look through 2024 for the team that Fev and Guy played in. There were no wins in 2024 for that team.
Mm.
Well, they get a 2 point win. They get a 2 point win. Fev kicks six of the seven goals that the team kicks, and Guy Sebastian does an Achilles.
Yeah,
I
I saw
mean,
that.
what an incredible day of footy. I mean, you couldn't have asked for much more from what you're getting there. I mean, that was one that I think we made a brief mention on last week's episode, and it's just the classic, you know, political correctness gone mad a little bit with people trying to potentially block Fev playing there because he might have been playing for money. And, is it fair given that, he's coming in a thirds Div 5 and, he's playing for a team that hasn't had a win, at least from what I can tell, in a couple of years, potentially longer than that. I wasn't
I
able
think
to
it's
go
three
through
years. Yeah,
3 years. Like,
yeah,
3 years they haven't had a win. Like, goodness, get over yourself at the end of the day.
yeah.
It's thirds Div 5, but I thought that was great. I thought it was a little bit cheeky for Vaffa to talk about integrity and this and that, and then basically do so much promotion of the game to make sure that they got a little bit of notoriety. I thought that's a little cheeky. I don't think you can't give them a clip and then at the same time try and promote it to the nth degree. So a little bit cheeky, I thought there from the Vaffa, but I also, I won't say too much because I want to get myself in trouble. I'll keep away from that.
Well, it was a pretty extraordinary day. I mean, they had well more than 1,000 people there apparently, and I would be wagering that they'd be lucky to get 1,000 people watching Masala Dandenong in the previous 3 years combined. Um,
Incredible.
so I mean that's extraordinary for a Div 5 thirds game. Um,
Yep.
love to see it, honestly. I reckon it's
Agree.
awesome. Um,
100% agree.
didn't love to see Guy Sebastian popping an Achilles, though. That's no good. But apparently he was racking up a few touches in the middle there. And then he wasn't going to play the second half. Um, ran off and did a concert at halftime, like put on a show for the fans, sung a few of his hits and whatever. And then he said to Fev, you know what, I'm feeling pretty good. I'm going to go back out on the field for the second half. And then he's done an Achilles, was it? Not his calf. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
no,
think it
he's
was his
done his Achilles.
Achilles. Yeah.
Um,
Know your limits
yeah.
is what I'd say. Know your limits. That's
Yeah.
that's ability, ambition, just getting a little mixed up there, I reckon.
Yeah. Yeah. No, this is I mean you did very well. You got in on starting off on your section of the run sheet first because I feel like this has got to be one of the biggest stories in local football perhaps all year. It's just absolutely blew up the VAFA social media page as you pointed out. Um, good on Masala Dandenong and good on Fev and Guy Sebastian for
Agreed. 100%.
yeah, for providing something pretty awesome for the people that went along on that day. Some of the marks he took, like it's just holding guys out and marking the ball with one hand, and like, yeah, it was pretty cool.
Incredible.
I thought it
I
was
loved
great.
it. Same.
All right, another ex-AFL, Pete. A little bit less notorious, a little bit less in the goal kicking column. In the AFL sense, Ben Crocker used to play for Collingwood and Adelaide. Um, he actually kicked 8 goals on the weekend, and he's got 27 goals in 5 games for Moe. Moe doing very strongly there in the Gippsland Footy League. Perhaps a little bit of a surprise packet. We did mention them briefly last week. Um, and Ben Crocker didn't get a mention last week, but he's racked up another bag there in the Gippsland League. So good on
Mm.
him. And yeah, impressive for Moe. They're going quite well.
Yeah, 100%. It reminds you that there's levels, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
you sort of go, oh, he was okay at AFL level, Benny Crocker. He wasn't amazing, but then he comes back to local footy and you go, this guy's a jet.
Yeah.
And it just reminds you that there's absolute levels when it comes to AFL and what you've got to be to get there and to consistently perform as one of the better players in the AFL. Just reminds you that yeah, there's a lot of talent out there. But moving through, we did interview Brandon Weatherson a few episodes ago, current coach of the seniors there at the Carisbrook Football Club. So I thought I'd take a little look at the Maryborough Castlemaine League. I think it's shaping up to be an interesting league, Rob, Maryborough Castlemaine. It is a
Mm.
big league, so it is hard to understand where some of these teams might be at given who they have played. It isn't one of those ones where you might have already played, 50 to 60% of the league and know where you might be sitting. But we've got two undefeated teams still in Harcourt and Natty Bialaba. Now, Natty Bialaba won the Premiership last year. Harcourt lost in the prelim final. Both of those two teams have been quite strong in the last few years. You've got Carisbrook, Talbot, and Trentham all on one loss only. So you've also got three teams there. And I know Carisbrook and Trentham have been around the mark recently. And I believe it was Brandon who told us that was it Talbot were having a real red hot crack this
Yeah.
year, and they actually knocked Carisbrook off a couple of weeks back, Talbot. So
Mm.
so he might have predicted that a little too well. I was interested to see that in that game, Talbot got off to a really hot start compared to
Yeah.
Carisbrook, and we had spoken to Brandon around do you know whether or not the guys are on, the guys are off? Like, what does that look like? I'm interested to know post that
Mm.
Talbot match how he felt at that start. Clearly, from the just looking at the scores alone, didn't look like the start they probably would have wanted in that game. But I think that's shaping up to be a really interesting league, the Maryborough Castlemaine League. And yeah, it's probably one we need to check back in with in a few more weeks' time to start to get a more of a sense as to where teams are sitting as more of them have played each other. But yeah, it definitely looks like it could be up for grabs there in the Maryborough Castlemaine League.
Yeah, the other thing that I remember Brandon saying about that was it was going to be the reignition of a rivalry. Uh,
Mhm.
I mean, in my memory, Talbot weren't that strong in recent years up until this season. And so the Carisbrook Talbot game, you pretty much would have had locked in for Carisbrook,
Yep.
pretty much all of the last 10 or 15 years.
Mm.
Um, so I just wonder whether there's a bit of a word gone around the Talbot change rooms. These guys used to be our arch enemies, and they've been doing a number on us for a long time. This is our chance to finally get one back. I
Mm.
just, hot start like that, as you said, maybe there
Yeah.
was a bit of a rev up there.
Yeah.
Like to think
Maybe.
so.
Just as a sidebar, for leagues like the Maryborough Castlemaine, there's a few other local leagues like it where they have so many teams that they do that awkward, like the AFL, which is always interesting, that little awkward, you maybe play two or three teams a second time, but a whole heap you don't play a second time. I thought it was really interesting to hear Dimmer Hardwick throughout the week talking about that from an AFL sense and saying that it should actually be 4 points in total for those matchups. So if you win the first one, you get 2 points. And if you win the second one, you get the other 2 points and you get the four. But if you lose that, then you've just got the two and the other team gets the other two for the total of 4 points. I actually thought that was a really genius way of starting to navigate some of these issues when it comes to this team got made it because they got to play this team a couple times and that team's not as strong and things like that. I thought that was really interesting, and I wondered whether there might be some of those country leagues that think, hey, we could almost trial this and see how it worked. But anyway, that might be a
I like
future
it.
little investigation we can do, a little footy fire starter.
I like that idea. I think that's quite neat. Yeah,
Same.
I mean, no doubt there'd be some clubs complaining. Yeah, don't mind it.
Stuff them.
Don't mind it. Question is how you even it out so that your 4 point games are not all against weaker opposition or stronger opposition or something. You could see anyway. Maybe we don't need to go too deep in it, but I think it would need a bit of ironing out. I reckon.
Agreed. Agreed.
Mm.
Bit of ironing out, but I thought it was one of the smartest suggestions I've heard in recent times in terms of like potential rule changes or league changes. I thought it was good. So well done to Dimmer.
Yeah, as far as out of the box ideas go,
Mm,
not bad, not
agreed.
bad. All right, Pete, I'm going to take us pretty close to the Maryborough Castlemaine League and have a little look at the Central Highlands Footy League, just down the road from Carisbrook and Maryborough and Castlemaine. Daylesford having a very strong start to the season there. I believe they won the flag last year in the Central Highlands League, if I'm not mistaken. Pretty hot start. They are 5-0.
Yep.
They're playing Dunstown on Saturday, who are
Ooh,
also undefeated.
yeah.
So this league is shaping up uh, pretty nicely, I would say. Um, Another reasonably large league, Central Highlands Footy League, 17 teams. So bound to be. I mean, that's one shy of the AFL in terms of numbers. So definitely going to be a situation where some teams won't play each other twice.
I,
I
they could
wonder if they're
I think they could almost be just one. I think they're just one shootout. I don't know
yeah,
whether they play anyone a second time in that league. I'd have to double check that. But
yeah,
I think from memory, they are just a one off. That's the one
yeah,
game you play against them.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it looks like a pretty competitive league. So we've got Dunstown and Dalesford up the top, both with percentages of more than 200 undefeated, playing each other this weekend.
Mm.
So if you're in that area, I don't know where the game is, but hop down there and check that one out. That's going to be a real cracker. Um, Clunes, Buninyong, uh, and Bungaree all on 4 wins, 1 loss. No, I lie, sorry. Clunes have had 4 wins but a draw. So
Ah,
they're
okay.
actually sitting third on the ladder by virtue of having a couple of extra points.
Yep.
Um, and then, yep, then there's a few teams on 12 points as well. So looks like a very competitive league. Yep, pretty impressive. Dunstown does for this weekend. I'd say that will be
Mm.
one to watch.
Certainly, most definitely it will be. And I think I've penciled in my Bungaree game for the year. I think I've mentioned I've got a mate that's there at Bungaree, and I think I've penciled in my Bungaree game for a VAFA bye on July 19. So I think I'll be there
I might have
watching
to join you.
a Bungaree game, which will be good. Rob,
And no, before you move on, the
okay,
important thing you haven't said about that is that you're going to be sampling the Bungaree canteen on that day
mate,
too.
mate,
Yeah. Yeah, I
that
can't
bung
believe you were about to move on without mentioning the canteen.
That Bungaree, I just assume that listeners or watchers are probably sick of me talking around that Bungaree canteen, but God,
I'm
that
not.
was good. Oh, I mean, I load me up on that roast beef roll again, I reckon. Yeah, I'm salivating thinking about it. Pavlov's dog is where I'm at that point for that. But we're gonna again move very close to where you've just been talking, Rob. You've been talking a little bit there around Central Highlands Footy League. North Ballarat in the Ballarat Football League. They were 9-6 in 2024. They're currently sitting 0-4 in 2025. So they're 2 losses away, having the total amount of losses they had last year. Uh,
Mm.
on top of that, moving to the Bendigo League, Golden Square were 10-6 last year. They've started the year 0-4. Uh, Potentially sign of troubles ahead for these clubs this season. I think when you're only 2 losses away from where you finished last season, very early in the year, very, very worrying as to where you're potentially heading. So, yeah, I think they're just a watch for me, those two. Clearly has not been the start either of them wanted. I think Golden Square get Kangaroo Flat this week, who are also on the bottom, dead bottom of their league. Not sure who North Ballarat have this week, but I think they missed a winnable one against Bacchus Marsh on the weekend, just gone. Um, so yeah, I think they're ones to watch. It's interesting. You and I went to a North Ballarat Redan game last year, and
That's the game this weekend.
that's the
I was
game
just
this
looking it up.
weekend.
Yeah.
There you go. And like I mean, North Ballarat won that game.
Mm.
Redan played quite well still, but I didn't look at a North Ballarat team that game and think, oh, they're going to struggle this season. So I sort of I know that Brendan McCartney, who was there, has moved and coaching now at Port Melbourne, but yeah, just wonder what's going on there in terms of North Ballarat and Golden Square and what that means for those clubs moving forward.
Yeah. Something else that's interesting about the Ballarat League. You look at the ladder, top down, Melton undefeated, Darley 1 loss, Sunbury 1 loss, East Point 1 loss, Bacchus Marsh. So in the top five in the Ballarat League, only one Ballarat club.
Mm,
All of the clubs outside the city of Ballarat, all of the ones closer to Melbourne, are looking very strong. And East Point, the lone representative of the city of Ballarat in there.
yep.
Ballarat, Sebastopol, Redan, North Ballarat, Lake Wendouree, mate, round out the league. So all of
Mm,
those other previously strong Ballarat clubs down the bottom.
yep.
All right. Uh, let's say we maybe move away from Central Victoria. Um, uh, I had a little look at East Brighton, Pete. They're playing very well at the moment. They made some headlines due to some extraordinary on-field performances in terms of touches. Possessions won. Alex Keith, there's a name you'll recognise. 44 touches in their win over Cheltenham on the weekend. Sean Downey, 47 touches. And Kyle Cooper, 41. Having three players getting over 40 touches is pretty impressive. That was a pretty big win for East Brighton over Cheltenham. I think it was 80 odd points. They're undefeated at the moment in the Southern Footy League in the Melbourne Southern Suburbs. Um, it was Vampires v Rosellas in that game. I do love having some different nicknames, and
That's good.
yeah, that's great. East Brighton versus Cheltenham Vampires v Rosellas. So anyway, East Brighton looking to be the powerhouse in that league, and
Yep.
AFL recruit Alex Keith absolutely topping that off.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I've probably mentioned this before, but Alex Keith, the turning circle of a double-decker bus. So he must be running one way to get those 44 disposals, but good on him. Um, Rumballara, Rob. We spoke about Rumballara in one of our earlier episodes. Unfortunately, it wasn't a positive talk about Rumballara. We were talking about the salary cap issues that they found themselves in. Not only that, we were talking about salary cap issues for a team that finished, almost near the bottom, had only won a handful of games. Like, you don't want to be having salary cap issues. Like, if you're going to have salary cap issues, at least get some wins on the board. Make it worthwhile. But I looked at their results in the first couple of rounds, Rob, and round one they lose by 149 points to the Road, and I sort of thought, okay, it's not great. Round two, 61 points to Moama. I'm thinking, oh, geez, the bottom's falling out here from the salary cap saga. Round three, 43 points to Numurkah. And I'm thinking, oh, God. They're in for an old tough year, Rumballara. They've run three on the trot now, Rob. So they've beaten Tongala by 12 points, beaten Denny by 9 points to Niliquin, and then Nathalia on most recently by 6 points. So close wins, but as we say, as the name of our podcast suggests, they're getting the 4 points, and that's all
Yeah.
that matters at the end of the day. And they now sit 3-3. So I don't know what they've done to turn that around, but that's an incredible turnaround from getting absolutely smoked pretty much the first 3 weeks. Now, I certainly understand that the Road and Moama are quite strong, but still to turn that around, especially given where Rumballara sat last year on the ladder. I thought that was a really good story, and I'm interested to see what they've got coming for us in the next 3 weeks. What do the next 3 weeks bring for Rumballara? I'm interested to find out.
Yeah, no, that's a good one, Pete. Um, Similar area. We accidentally here kind of grouping our one for one here in similar parts of the state. Although I did chime in there with East Brighton before, but moving a little bit further south of where you were with Rumballara, I just wanted to make mention of Undera. So Undera, this is in the
Andira,
Kyabram. Undera. Thank you.
Andira. There you go, mate.
Yeah, thank you. Got my back there. Undera, Odira. No, they were on an Odira. They were on a 23 game losing streak, but they've broken it. They've beaten Avenel by 5 points. So Kyabram District Football Netball League. We haven't spoken too much about
Nice.
the Kai District League, so good to get them in. Undera. Yeah, that's very good for them. Um, Now, interestingly, Avenel, sometimes, Pete, when you see these losing streaks being broken, they've beaten a team that are
Mm,
struggling on the bottom of the ladder. Avenel actually have won a couple of games this year, sitting mid-table.
okay,
So that's very impressive by Undera.
that's encouraging.
So actually, Merrigum and Talagarupna remain as the winless teams in
Yep.
that league. Who have Undera got this week? I think they might have the bye. No, they are playing Nagambie. They're
Okay.
playing Nagambie. And Nagambie are doing reasonably well. They're
Right.
they're currently third on the ladder. So that'd be a tough one for
Mm,
Undera to get a second win. Um, Murchison Toolamba are the runaway leaders in that league. It is interesting looking around the leagues after 5 or 6 or 4 rounds. Most leagues have an undefeated team,
mm,
and in the Kaya District League, that's Murchison Toolamba.
mm.
So, but anyway, I bet the beers were flowing there in the Undera pub on Saturday night, breaking a 23-game losing streak.
I would have thought so. And yeah, it's an interesting call about the undefeated teams in the league. I wonder how many leagues currently have no undefeated teams in it after this many rounds. I think I could be wrong. I feel confident in saying we've talked about it a lot, so we won't talk about it because too much. But Ovens and Murray, I don't think. I think everyone's had a loss in that league. I think we've spoken about the sort of competitiveness of that league, which I think is really encouraging for them. I could be wrong on that, but I reckon they're one that everyone's had a loss so far. I wonder if we could find actually even more challenging. I wonder if we could find a league where everyone's had a win and everyone's had a loss. Can we find one where there's everyone's
Hmm.
had at least one win and at least one loss? So that might be something we need to look through over the coming week to see if we can find somewhere. But
I was going to give you Prem B Vafa. Not everybody's all
not
games in
quite.
that league. Yeah,
Yeah, not
no,
quite, but
but not
certainly
everybody's won a game either. So
correct.
we'll get to that later.
We will. But it's interesting you mentioned Vafa because that's where I'm heading, Rob. And I wish I could be more positive here with what I'm about to mention, but it is the Monash Blues, and they are in an absolute blue state at the minute. They are 0-5 in Div 1. So this is a team that has been tumbling down the grades in recent years. Um, it looks like it could be potentially another relegation on the cards. It's a long way to go, of course. Still a fair bit to go in the season, and they haven't, of course, even played each team once. But 0-5 is not how they would have wanted to start the year in Div 1, having moved down from Prem C. So yeah, I pray. I really like Monash Blues. I think as we've mentioned before, we've played against them at the Blacks when they were in our grade, and we've also seen at the Blacks what happens when you tumble down the grades and how challenging it is to make your way back up the grades. And yeah, I hope Monash Blues can maybe string some wins together in the next few weeks and give a little bit of life to their 2025 season and get into a relegation battle and try and get out of that zone.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I also like them, and hopefully they can get some wins on the board. That's definitely a struggle when you get into zip and five in a league that's got relegation. Yeah, you start getting nervous. I mean, you talked about backs to the wall last week, Pete, and it's going to be survival mode, backs to the wall stuff
Yeah,
for Monash Blues for sure.
definitely.
All right, we're going to go back into sort of central Victoria. Last week, or 2 weeks ago, it is now, we reported about Marlon Pickett. He made his debut for Great Western
Yep.
over in Western Victoria, and that made a bit of news over there. Now he's made his second country football debut for the year, this time at Melton South in the Riddle District Football Netball League. He was always on the cards to play for Melton South this season. The game for Great Western was playing a game with a mate. Um, and anyhow, they had Marlon Pickett there at Melton South for what was a cracking game of football, a 2-point loss for Melton South to Romsey. So that would have been an absolute cracker to watch. It looks like that league is quite competitive, I would say, Pete. Riddle are the team to beat. They're 5-0. That league does have an undefeated club still. Um, so Riddle look like the team to beat. But yeah, great game there. And I bet Melton South will be very happy to have Marlon Pickett on board in their first season back in the Riddle League.
Definitely. Most definitely. I'm sticking Vafa.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to something that caught my eye that I thought was just maybe a little bit of a watch to see where these two teams are at. But in 2024 Div 1 Grand Final, Paran beat Parkside. It was a very low scoring encounter, that one, if you remember that, Rob. I think that was 2-10-22 to maybe 5-4. No, yeah, 5-4-34, maybe 5-6-36. I don't know. It was around that score.
Yeah,
With Paran beating Parkside, and I was just having a look at Prem C where they've now both moved to. Paran currently sitting 0-5 in Prem C, whereas Parkside sit 2-3. So the losing grand final side, and I just to me, I just wondered. I know we've spoken a lot about promotion and relegation and things like that. How many times the runner-up of the grand final actually outperforms the Premier winner when they go up to that higher grade? So yeah, a little bit of a watch for me to see where that finishes up. I think Parkside will have loved the fact that they got to play Paran round one in a grand final rematch, and they got the first win on the board there. So yeah, very interesting to see where that sits. I don't think too often you see the runner-up outperforming the grand final or the Premier winner, sorry, in VAFA promotion. So I'll be
yeah,
interested to see where that finishes at the end of the season.
yeah, and that's not happening in A grade, where De La Salle, who were the runners up, are definitely being outplayed by Haileybury, who won the flag in B grade last year.
Yep.
Haileybury have had a pretty strong start to the year, and De
Mm.
La winless to this point.
And not happening in B grade either, Rob, where I believe was it oh did who won in B grade?
Can't remember,
No, but Hampton came up and
and they're struggling.
they are struggling. And then I can't remember who Hampton might have played in that grand final, had a little bit of a memory blank there.
Might have been old Kerry, Pete, I think.
It could have been, and I think Old
Yeah,
Carey won the grand final
yeah,
from memory.
yeah,
So
they did.
again, yeah, so Old Carey outperforming
Yeah.
Hampton there. So yeah, so just an interesting little look there at Prem C. They could Parkside could be the only team again. Haven't had a look at all the divisions, but Parkside could nearly be the only team as runner up that are outperforming the Premiership winner there at the minute.
All right. Staying in the VAFA, I've got one for you from the VAFA, up to the A grade. We had the grand final rematch on the weekend from the A grade grand final of 2024.
Yep.
So that was Old Brighton against Old Scotch. And Old Brighton are the VAFA A grade's undefeated team. They are looking very slick, I would say. They certainly
Mm,
were very slick when they played against the Blacks in round one.
they were.
So very happy Old Brighton there, getting the grand final rematch locked away there against Scotch. Of course, Scotch won the flag last year in A grade, but Brighton managed to win that game even after kicking 8 goals, 28. That's got to be one of the worst accuracy ratios I've ever seen, and especially in a winning side.
It's shocking.
Pretty
It's
crazy.
absolutely shocking. Like
Yeah,
it felt like when we played them, they kicked 28-8. Like, kick 8-28 against us, please. Well, yeah, that I saw that and I just thought that's a disgrace. Yep. Yeah, take the points off them, I reckon. That's unless the only way we won't do it is if they've been listening to this podcast and they've bought into our
mm,
scoring system. If they've bought
mm.
into our scoring system, then give them double points. I say, but 8-28 is not good kicking, Trosh. That's not good
Grim.
kicking. That's very good.
But in this case, bad kicking still somehow equated to good football.
Yeah,
So,
well, maybe not bad kicking, bad football, maybe worse football from Scotch. I mean,
yeah,
Scotch kicked 4-7, so
yeah.
wasn't like they were on a pathway to kicking much better. But if we're talking grim, Rub, this caught my eye. I don't know why I was just parading through the VAFA Tribunal page on the
You're a sucker
website.
for punishment.
Ah, tell me about it. I was really just trying to make sure none of our players had been suspended. That's pretty much what I tend to do is just look at that. But I came across it. I had to really work through this because the VAFA hadn't made the website as clear and obvious as it should have been. But I saw a player, Charlie Dillon, at Parkdale, right? Now he's in there, and this is how the VAF has set it up: is rounds 1 to 3, like who's been suspended in that time, and I didn't really make much sense to me. But Charlie Dillon had a 3 weeks down to 2 weeks with the guilty plea. So anyway, I went to Charlie's Play HQ page, and sure enough, there's his 2025 stats. So he did play round one, and obviously from round one gets suspended. Initially given 3 weeks, down to 2. So misses round 2, misses round 3, plays round 4. Perfect. So round 4 is in Play HQ. He's played round 1, round 4. And then I look at the round 4 reports, and Charlie Dillon's gone for another 3 weeks. So he's having a great season in 2025, Charlie. He's played round 1, gotten 2 weeks, come back in round 4, gotten 3 weeks. So we'll see him again in sort of round 8 or whenever it is he's due back. But yeah, not great for Charlie. If I see Charlie on the tribunal list one more time, that's not going to be great for him. But I saw it and I went, no, surely there's been a stuff up here. Like surely, like maybe they just accidentally copied and pasted his name for this one. But no, two separate charges, two separate games, two separate suspensions, and Charlie not having a great 2025, or maybe having an incredible 2025. Loading up on hot dogs, eating pies at the game. Who knows what he's doing? But I'm interested to know if Parkdale have any, like, you know, fines or suspensions or something like that for getting suspended, because Charlie potentially might be funding a lot of the footy trip in the off season.
Well, I hope Parkdale don't have any suspensions for suspensions because he won't play again.
True.
Look, mate, it's not his fault. His friends have all booked weddings in these beautiful autumn Saturdays that we've been having. And look, he was going to go out and play round 4, and he thought, well, I've got weddings the next 3 weeks. I might as well whack someone. I mean, what's the?
Potentially, who knows?
No, we don't want to make light of whacking anybody. That's not
No.
cool. Um, all right. Well, let's hope that by the time round 8 comes, he can keep his hands where they belong. Um, all right. Out to the Northern Footy League. We did talk a little bit about the Northern Footy League early in the year. They've had a few big AFL recruits. One game caught my eye there in the scores this weekend, and that was Hurstbridge holding on by 1 point over Banyule. We love a 1 point game,
Yeah.
especially, Pete, when the score is 15-10-100
Oh yeah.
to 14-15-99. A
Mm.
little bit of inaccuracy, especially from Banyule there, who, having kicked 14-15 to 15-10, will feel like they probably should have won that game. But nevertheless, for that level of inaccuracy, kicking that higher score and ending up as a 1 point margin, I doubt there'll be a better game all season in the Northern Footy League than that. What an absolute classic.
That is a classic. And just think, at least it's not 8-26 there
Yeah.
from Banyule. It could have been much worse in terms of kicking. But Rob, I don't know about you, but I'm hearing a big sound from the west of the town, and I don't know. Did you mention this one? I don't know if you mentioned this one in the Riddle League.
I think I left it out, Pete. You better
You
give us the big news.
you touched on the Riddle League, and I thought, oh, here we go. We're going to get a big sound from the west of the town, but we didn't. It's not the Greater Western Sydney Giants; it's the Gisborne Giants, and the new club that's been created there in Gisborne, playing in the Riddle League. They've won their first ever senior game. They beat bottom of the ladder Lancefield. You got to beat someone though, by 15 points. It is unfortunately Lancefield's 21st straight loss, so unfortunate for them. But what a great story that the Gisborne Giants get their first ever win as a football club. So you can only ever do it once, and that's how they've done it. And I'm sure We're talking about the beers were flowing in Undera. Well, the beers would have been flowing in Gisborne, no doubt, off the back of that win. So, congratulations there to the Giants, and I hope they sang the song with absolute gusto. I'm sure I haven't looked, but I'm sure their Instagram or Facebook page surely has to be littered with videos of the team singing the song. Probably I reckon that would have been, Rob, one of those ones where it wouldn't have just been the 22 players singing the song. I reckon that could have been one of those ones where you've got just about everyone in the club arm in our arm singing. So congratulations there to the Giants.
That presumes, of course, that anybody knew the words to the song. Um,
Pro.
Look, yeah, that's kind of extraordinary to think about. A situation where you get to the end of the game, first ever win of the club, and everybody's looking around at themselves like, did somebody write us a team song? Have we got one? We've got a ground, we've got a jumper, we've got a win now. Did anybody write us a song?
Are we assuming that their song is just the Greater Western Sydney song with some slight changes, or
Um, yeah, I guess so. Um, yeah,
so?
it'd be
Because
interesting to find out.
because then
We
I
should check out their Instagram and find out.
then I feel like people probably would have known it because I think a lot of people really like that Greater Western Sydney
Yeah,
song and have somewhat memorized it, especially when they made that run to the grand final. Everyone was talking about
yeah,
how it was a big sound. So
yeah.
I'm just having a look at their Facebook page on my phone, and yeah, they do have a video of it being sung. I am correct that it is not just the 22 players. There is a lot of people in that circle. That I'd like to know where they're singing it, Rob. It looks like they're just singing in a factory warehouse. Like it genuinely looks like a factory warehouse. I don't know, is that their change rooms or it looks like a factory. Well, have a look at for yourself when you have a look. But I'll have to have a little listen and see how well they've sung that. But there it is. It's pretty much the whole club arm in arm singing in a factory.
There you go. Good on them. Oh, Pete, all right, that's got us to the end, I think, of our what's caught our eye. That was a nice long segment, a good point for point. Good to cover a few different leagues. I think
Yeah,
it's
great.
great to get around the state a little bit. Yeah, I'm excited to get out and get see that Bungaree game and maybe some others as well. But before we finish off, as is traditional, we need to update our Paddock to Premiership picks. I'm going to pull a fast one on you here. I'm going to go first because I often, I've often not had good news, especially in one of my clubs, especially my pick with the heartbeat.
Yeah.
This week, I am very happy to say that Fitzroy have got the monkey off the back. Or if you think about the old nickname of the Fitzroy Football Club, you might say they've got the gorilla off the back.
I love that. That's a callback. That is a
So,
great callback.
so
For all
the
of our
gorilla
listeners
is
over 70 out there, they'll love that.
those of our listeners who are over 70 and know how to work YouTube and Spotify will love that.
That's
It's a
one for you.
niche demographic.
That's one for you, George.
So actually, very impressive dispatching of the gorilla off the back. 103-point demolition of Hampton Rovers.
Mm,
I did
huge.
declare on last week's pod that the loser of that game would be relegated, and I think, given that Hampton are winless and losing to the second bottom team by 103 points, that's probably not a controversial statement. Unfortunately
Probably
for
not.
Hampton Rovers, but I'm very happy for Fitzroy. They do have a big challenge this week. However, they're playing Old Ivanhoe, who are third on the ladder and in pretty decent form, Old Ivanhoe. So, look, it'll be a big relief for Fitzroy. The results had been trending better in the last few weeks, even before they had that big win. So maybe they have got some players back. Maybe they've got some of their mojo back. Maybe they've got a few people back from overseas. Who knows
Mm.
what's happening there down at the Brunswick Street Oval? But yeah, happy for the Royals.
Yep.
How about you?
Uh,
Where do your Paddock to Premiership picks start, Pete?
Look, first thing I will say is I think perfect matchup for Fitzroy off the back of a win. Come up against old Ivanhoe. I think they think they're up there. They think they're top shit. I think they think they've got a pretty good chance. Um, I think they've penciled this game in as a win, old Ivanhoe, and I think Fitzroy off the back of a win themselves. I've given them a sneaky little. We'll have to wait and see what the results say Saturday night, but I'm giving them a sneaky little chance of upsetting old Ivanhoe here, who I think are probably rolling around at training right at this minute, Rob, going, what are we doing Saturday night to celebrate, boys? So
Mm.
I'm tipping danger game. We'll have to wait and see. I could look like an absolute fool, and to be honest, Rob, I look like a fool most of the time, so it doesn't really harm me in just making outlandish predictions. But I'm going to go, Rob, to Castlemaine. My pick with the head. I said last week's episode they needed to take a scalp. I said that I felt like Gisborne could be that scalp. I gave Gisborne people a little bit of a clip just about being in from Gisborne. Unfortunately, Castlemaine with a 21-point loss there to Gisborne. So close, but no cigar. You have to start to wonder whether the injury to Bailey Henderson has really impacted what that team can do. Clearly, it's not doom and gloom. They're 21 points to Gisborne, who look like they'll be a high finals team. Is still not a terrible result, but really felt like they needed the scalp there for that one. It did look like they were playing at the graveyard. I mentioned my fondness for the graveyard. Did look like there was a scoring end. 14 of the 19 goals were kicked to one end. So just what you love in footy when there's just one end that you can only kick goals at. So no game this week for Castlemaine, split round. Why there's a split round, I don't know. Ask the powers that be at Bendigo. But no game for Castlemaine this weekend. So yeah, I know they've got Eagle Hawk in 2 weeks' time. Again, a team that's above them on the ladder, so another opportunity to try and take a scalp, and they just need one at this point.
Yeah, and not only was it Gisborne Giants' first win on the weekend, but it's the first time both teams in Gisborne had a win. So you're right that the beers would have been flowing in Gisborne on the weekend. The
I'm not
Bulldogs and the Giants
I'm
both.
not sure the Bulldogs would have celebrated.
Yeah.
Soulless club. But
Oh,
I've gone whack a second week in a row. But yeah. I won't go any further there. We can move on.
moving along.
Actually,
Moving
sorry.
on.
No, I will just say Castlemaine reserves did have a win against Gisborne, and this is by far one of the most successful years I've seen the Castlemaine reserves put together for some time. So I think in the space of 1 year, they've managed to win just about equal the amount of games I won during my Castlemaine twos career. So well done to them.
Yeah, that's good. Very good stuff, Castlemaine reserves. Look, 21-point loss to Gisborne is not it's not too bad at all. And if the depth is there, you'd think, yeah, Castlemaine can be there or thereabouts come the second half of the year, get Bailey back. Yeah, you never know. You
Yep,
never know.
agreed.
I think it's good to see they're not getting blown out of the water by those clubs that are even their loss to Sandhurst wasn't that big. So
Yep,
yeah, pretty decent signs I reckon there for Castlemaine and
agreed.
still in a growth period from what I
Yep,
could see when we went and watched them play.
also agreed.
Um, Pete, my second pick I'll give you here is Karingal. Look, it's a tough year for Karingal. I picked them as a pick with as a wild card pick, really, and it's turning out to be one of those wild cards that's pretty wild. Um, yeah, it's a tough year for Nathan Burke coaching Karingal Bulls down there in the Mornington Peninsula League Div 2. 100+ point loss to Devon Meadows. The percentage is plummeting a bit for Karingal, unfortunately. Um, they play Chelsea, who are mid-table, next to Devon Meadows on the ladder, so that's looking a bit tough for
Mm,
Karingal. Fingers crossed they can get a few players back or something, or um, they are yet to play the other two clubs that are struggling down the bottom of the ladder. So
okay,
um, there's hope for a win
still
at
hope.
at some point, but at the moment, yeah, tough start.
Yep. Tough start. Well, I'll match your wild card for my wild card. Tulibuck Manangatang. They were playing bottom of the ladder Swan Hill. It was a 98-point win. They did it all in the first half, leading by 79 points at half time. Absolutely cruised from there. Very even spread of goal kickers. Sort of had a look to see if anyone kicked a bag. Someone did kick four, but then they had, off the top of my head, I can't remember the exact number, but five or six guys that kicked two goals each, a couple that kicked one. So obviously spreading it around a lot, which was encouraging, moves them to fourth on the ladder. Connor Nutting, who was the man that kicked four in that game, he's currently leading the goal kickers for the league on 22 off four games. So not quite Aaron Mullett, but 22 goals in four games. You're nearly averaging just under six a game. It's not bad.
Yeah, not bad at all. Yep, impressive there. Tuli Manangatang certainly getting it done. Similar part of the state, Pyramid Hill. My pick with the head. Things are looking good up there. I got one of my picks sort of right, Pete. 41-point win for the Bulldogs there over Bridgewater.
Yep.
They're looking pretty good. Second on the ladder behind the undefeated Morong. Pyramid Hill 4-1 with a percentage of a tick over 150, so that's pretty good. And they play Inglewood, who are mid-table this week. So the form Pyramid Hill are in, I think they would be expecting to win that game over Inglewood, who I think are the Blues.
Yes, they are. And to finish us off, Rob, North Albury, the Hoppers, my pick with the heart. They were also playing bottom of the ladder. So a couple of my Paddock to Premiership picks had little bottom of the ladder matches this last week. They beat the Wodonga Raiders by 73 points. Sounds easy, 73 points. The Hoppers were down at quarter time, which I'm sure maybe got them a little bit of a rev up from the coach. I'm sure maybe at quarter time, a little bit of what the hell are you doing? Only 17 points up at halftime. So not running away with it at that stage. Clearly, by winning by 73, kicked on in the second and the third and the fourth quarter in the second half, and ran away quite comfortably. Another big game there for the Hoppers coming up. They had a pretty easy one against the Wodonga Raiders. They are playing against the Wangaratta Magpies. So Hoppers are sitting second, Magpies are sitting third. So a big one there to see sort of where both teams sit. You know, who's around that mark. It really does look like that is a league that is very competitive and even, as we've spoken about. But Wangaratta Rovers, North Albury Hoppers, and Wangaratta Magpies are just showing that when the going gets tough, all those three teams just have a little bit of extra class at the minute. But it'll be interesting to see what the level looks like when it's the Magpies versus the Hoppers. So that'll be a big one on Saturday if you're around there for that game. I reckon that'll be a good one to watch.
Sounds great. You probably even watched it on a live stream, I would say, for the O&M League.
You would be able to, I reckon, yes.
Yeah, yeah. All right, Pete. I think that's got us to the end of our Paddock to Premiership as well. Nice work. Good research there around the state, around the leagues. We hope that your side is going to get the 4 points on the weekend. Maybe they'll break a streak. Maybe they'll take a scalp. Maybe they'll be up and about. Maybe they'll be playing the bottom of the ladder and have a big win. You never know. We hope it's a good weekend for you and your team. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
See ya.